Old clock on the wall says it's 6 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and proceed. We do have a quorum. We have all 5 trustees, excuse me, online. We have our college attorney, and we have the president here and his cabinet. So we're going to get going. Unless anyone has any suggested changes, the minutes for the board meeting of June 24th and the workshop of August 3rd will stand as printed. There is no public comment tonight, and so we'll go directly to celebrating success with Dr. McLennan. And one quick reminder, if you're not speaking, please go ahead and mute your mic.
All right, good evening, everybody. Let me see if I'm technologically capable this evening. All right. All right, Chair Dunlap, thank you for this opportunity to share a little bit about our recent accreditation reaffirmation. Last time we met with the board, I believe it was the next day that you and Dr. Burns and I would be attending the commission meeting virtually. But let me back you up just a bit. So we had our visit in mid-April. We get my cursor in the right place here. At our visit in mid-April, we received a report from the visiting team chair, which included its evaluation of our compliance, the commendations and recommendations, and a full document assessing our report and the visit. And I picked just one of the sentences in the concluding remarks of the visiting team's report that will give you kind of a tone of how we fared with that evaluation. As a result of the report, our report, the visiting team report, and our appearance before the commission, I received a letter from the commission communicating the outcome of the process on July 22nd. And this is just a short excerpt from that letter. And you can see it again goes through the elements of the decision, how we got to that point from a process perspective, and then the outcome, which was of course reaffirmation. And so that's where we stand with there. And I just thought I wanted to take just a minute to review what accreditation is and why it's important to us, especially for those of you who are viewing this from the public tonight. First and foremost, well, it's a process and it's a status. It's both a process of going through to achieve it, and then once you do that, you're designated an accreditation status. And in our case, it was reaffirmation on this 7-year cycle. It is a volunteer association between the commission and member colleges and universities. It's non-governmental. It addresses specific standards around finance, student support, general education, planning and effectiveness, and on and on. There are several standards. And then importantly, it involves a self-review by the institution and widespread involvement of the institution and peer evaluation. And in addition to helping us improve as an institution, it provides institutional integrity in that we deliver what we say we deliver. It instills a sense of confidence in the value of a degree earned at North Idaho College. And overall, it assures the public of the value of the college and our offerings. And importantly, it provides us eligibility to participate in federal financial aid programs and other forms of financial aid. And then importantly, it provides the ability for us to transfer credit to other institutions. In fact, you'll note that credit is right in the middle of accreditation, and that's really how this whole thing got started. So I mentioned we had a series of commendations. We had 5 in total, and I'll just briefly go through those commendations. The first was on Molstead Library, and really just the transformation Molstead Library has gone over since the last accreditation review, especially with respect to rapidly changing world of information access. And NIC holding the value of information literacy as a critical element of student success. The second one was recognizes our efforts to connect and meaningfully engage in our entire region with respect to economic and workforce development. And it also acknowledged the role of the foundation and just generally our responsiveness as a community college overall. And the third one, recognize our significant efforts and just years of focus really on the work we've done to more effectively meet student needs, help support student success. They've identified some of those. There are more in the report. These are the ones that were called out in the commendation. And fourth was recognizing the exceptional financial health and commitment to good stewardship of the institution. And keep in mind, this was the evaluation, the site visit, virtual site visit was done right in the middle of some of the most uncertain times around the pandemic, COVID-19, and we received this recognition within that context. And then the fifth, again, recognition of our attention to regional needs in a sustainable way. And this really looking at the Workforce Training Center and developing programs and processes that are cost effective and sustainable. The recommendations, we received two, and I just want to put these in context. Both of these recommendations really will serve us well. I like to think of them as wind behind our sails, or as the chair of the visits, Dr. Sherwin said, they're really a nudge to keep you moving in the direction you're already going. And, whoops, sorry about that. And this first one recognizes our institutional planning efforts and notes that we're still in the process of developing the metrics by which we will evaluate and ultimately demonstrate mission fulfillment. And the second, you'll recall the presentation, the excellent work last winter on student learning outcomes assessment. This recommendation both acknowledges that work and again nudges us forward. With respect to both of these recommendations, work is already underway and has begun. I just want to, I guess, close by saying that throughout this whole process, many people were involved. I lost count along the way, but it was numbered in the hundreds. And we have the Executive Accreditation Committee, the Core Accreditation Committee, numerous subcommittees, and we're working on some creative ways to acknowledge the contributions of so many people. Unfortunately, during this particular time we're in right now, there will not be a party, but we're going to find alternative ways to celebrate. More to come on that. But I did want to identify some key people who are involved in this, and they do deserve public recognition here this evening. And I'm going to call them up here. The first is Dr. Lita Burns, Dr. Larry Briggs, Dr. Steve Kurtz, Dr. Karen Ruppel, and Ms. Kathy Sparks. You know, there's a lot of effort that went into this. These five individuals were the ones that brought it home from the beginning of the project to the end. And of course, they had a lot of help along the way, but these are the ones that actually produced the ultimate version of the report that we submitted to the commission. And so I want to just recognize them and express my deep appreciation for the work that they did on all this. We ended in a really good place. We received reaffirmation, as I mentioned, with no interim reports required or subsequent follow-up visits. So we will just re-enter the regular cycle of accreditation now, which puts us on that 7-year cycle. We'll have a mid-cycle review, but all things normal in the world of accreditation. And I just want to end by saying thank you to the trustees for your participation in the process. you all, both in terms of the production of the report and your interactions with the evaluation committee. And Dr. Dunlap, you're joining us on the visit with the commission in June, all deeply appreciated. And I will stand for any questions or comments, but that ends this report.
Well, Dr. McLennan, I'd like to say thank you very much to you and your A team, but also I would like to recognize the efforts that the faculty, the staff, and your cabinet put in to make this such a huge success. This was a remarkable achievement, and you've done extremely well. So thank all of you. Any other questions or comments for President McLennan?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Trustee Wood.
Thank you. It's so hard on Zoom to do a standing ovation or anything that you all deserve. And, you know, I'm so glad that you mentioned your A team. And then, Joe, you talked about all the other groups that put effort into this. And the accreditation is where the rubber really hits the road. Mm-hmm. And it isn't really just about making us all look good, because it's not skin deep at all. We really are good. And so it's just so satisfying to listen to that report. And after all the work that went into it, I'm just incredibly grateful. Just as Joe said, I wish we could do more. Hard to do it in this format. But thank you to everyone.
Our first constituent report is from ASNIC with Kai Settlemeyer-Nardi, and she also sent out a written report in case we lose contact with her. So Kai, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me all right? Great. Thank you for having me here. I will go ahead and get started. Throughout the summer, ASNIC representatives worked to develop an officer handbook, and this handbook describes the expectations of ASNIC officers, the procedures we must follow, and the resources that are available to us on campus. We also created some additional documents to further describe the process of developing resolutions, gathering student input, and marketing. And we are planning to use all of this as a reference for functionality and conducting ourselves. In the spring semester, as previously reported, our board had revised and updated the ASNIC Constitution and bylaws. And this process included modifying the standards for our elections to include students who, for whatever reason, wouldn't be able to participate in the spring elections. So we elected 5 senators and held 3 seats, and now we are actively recruiting for these remaining seats. By September 18th, we should have our full board, which is very exciting. And if you have any questions or want any more information about our elections, it can be found at nic.edu/elections, and I can, of course, answer most likely. For the week of welcome, we are planning on engaging with students via Zoom.
I think we lost you on the audio, Kai.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm sorry that there are technical difficulties. I will just back up to the week of welcome. We plan on engaging with our students via Zoom, and on Wednesday we will have a meet and greet with ASNIC officers. So students can familiarize themselves with us and just meet us in general and ask any questions they might have. And on Thursday, there will be another Zoom session for information about clubs, and more details about the week of welcome and what we have going on then will be at nic.edu/wow. And ASNIC has already met twice virtually for our pre-semester training, and until further notice, we will continue to conduct as many events and meetings as we can virtually. And unless they are given special permission, clubs will also be meeting virtually. Justine Lackner, our vice president, will be working to support them and help them come up with ideas for sustainability. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a moment. I apologize. A club innovation contest is also being developed to incentivize the clubs to continue virtually and give them ideas for how they can hold events and engage with each other and the NIC community. And finally, we are also working with marketing to develop a health safety pledge and plan on being active in the process of promoting good mask and health practices. Our first official meeting of the semester is tomorrow, and we will be coming together as a group to decide what steps need to be taken to be the best student support system we can be in this time. And we also plan on filming a video of all of us taking the pledge to be used for marketing. And that is what I have for you.
Thank you very much, Kai. And before I forget, thank you very much for emceeing Convocation. That was the most succinct convocation I've ever been a part of. So thank you very much. Any other questions or comments for Kai? All right, next we will have a report by the Faculty Assembly, Chris Pelchat. Now, Chris submitted an amended agenda for us, or a portion of an amended agenda that he'll address later when we get to tab 5. But Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Dunlap, fellow board members. The Faculty Assembly had our first meeting of the year last Thursday. And the majority of the meeting was dedicated to the second reading of our Constitution and bylaw amendments that were proposed in the spring. That's the action item that will be coming up, so I won't spend a lot of time here talking about that. But that took about 45 minutes of the meeting. And then we spent some time talking about a policy and procedure that's going to be handed up this year around faculty evaluation. Sherry Simpkins spoke to the majority of the changes within the document, and Ann Johnston from the library spoke specifically about the evaluation processes that are being proposed for librarians. We just had them present the documents and talk through the changes, where to look, and then we encouraged the faculty to talk with their chairs and their colleagues about how these changes might impact them. And we plan to have a more thorough discussion about those changes at our September Faculty Assembly meeting. We also talked a little bit about some diversity things that came up in the spring. The Diversity Council is a group on campus that tries to carry the torch for diversity on campus, and a student had brought forward a concern that they had no idea that the council existed, and would have liked access to it at a sooner time. And so the Diversity Council put a statement together to be included for faculty in their syllabus if they would so like to include that. So that statement was talked about, that situation was discussed, and then the statement was forwarded to faculty to include if they would like. And that ended the meeting for Faculty Assembly. So that's all I have for you today.
Thank you very much, Chris. Any questions or comments for Chris? Hearing none, we'll move on to Staff Assembly. Jeff Davis, good evening. You're on mute.
I didn't say I wasn't a bit of a Luddite. Good evening, Chair Dunlap, Trustees, President McLennan, Council, President's Cabinet members, and colleagues and guests. We had quite an excellent introduction this year, I think, amid everything that's been going on for our Staff Assembly meeting. And we, of course, always begin with our housekeeping minutes and such, new employee introductions, which in these times is always interesting and fun because we're introducing new employees who we've never seen face to face. We haven't shake hands with them. We haven't, bantered with them on the campus. So it's fun to see that the wheels are still turning and that new things are always happening that are very positive on our campus. We did some shout outs, as we always do. And then I rather hastily, I must admit, for my very first meeting as staff assembly chair, sent out an invitation to President's Cabinet and some other folks around campus that we thought would be great to hear from. And it surprised me and delighted all of us that so many people said, yes, we will be there. So I was able to introduce so many nice folks from around the campus, including our presidents and vice presidents, deans. And the tone that they struck, I have to say, was so enjoyable. They did, it did not become contentious. It was not a firing line or an opportunity for folks to pillory anybody. It was an opportunity for us to hear, as the minutes were ticking by before school started, to hear from the people in leadership positions. And we roundly agreed that what we got was leadership. And it was casual, it was informative. Everybody got a chance to speak. And as you are all well know, I am given to fits of whimsy, and they all joined right in. It was a great way to begin our new year. And under all this uncertainty, we collectively, and I received a lot of emails telling me how much folks had enjoyed that first meeting. And I thought it was a great kickoff to the year and a great kickoff to my tenure as staff assembly chair. Without getting into a lot of detail, it was folks like Graydon and Lita and Chris Martin and Ken Wardinsky to just give us an idea of how they are planning to proceed, and that things really are still moving along at North Idaho College, even though as I broadcast from my home, I still get to feel like I'm part of the community, and that we are still working together, not in reaction, but positive action in these times. That was an amazing thing to witness. We always have good of the order. We had a Senate report from Steve Kurtz. President's Advisory Council had not met yet, so Sarah Martin, our new vice chair, was not able to speak to that. And we were able to give Steve Kurtz an opportunity to look for volunteers for important things that we need from him. And as we worked well into the lunch hour, our staff showed very clearly that as a family, North Idaho College will meet these challenges with cheer. And we did have some very light moments that I think struck just the exact right tone. And we had a great buy-in. It was actually a little tough to adjourn. We were having a nice time. So we did indeed adjourn. And that is my report for the staff assembly.
Thank
Any
you,
questions?
Jeff. Any questions or comments for Jeff? Hearing none, we'll move on to the Senate. And Dr. Kurtz, good evening.
Good evening, Chair Dunlap, Board of Trustees. Our meeting, as well as my report, have one common characteristic. It's to be very brief. We briefly met on Thursday, and minutes were approved. We had a review of Robert's Rules of Orders. We had a few of our senators who were new to the process, so we briefly went over that. We talked about our major goal of the year, which will be the review of board policy, the section with administration as outlined with the recent board policy that was passed last year. Other than that, we look forward to our student senators joining us next month. That concludes my report. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Steve. Any questions or comments for Dr. Kurtz? Hearing none, we'll move on to the president's report. Dr. McLennan.
I too have a very brief report, Chair Dunlap. I'm just going to use the time to acknowledge all the Herculean efforts and work that the entire college has gone through since the beginning of this pandemic, all leading to today, the first day of classes. And it went pretty well. We got through day one. We're pretty pleased with that. I had the opportunity to walk around campus today. Went into almost all of our instructional buildings, and with just a very, very few exceptions, saw people following the plan that we put in place. Everybody had masks on. They didn't need to be asked to put them on for the most part. And we had ambassadors driving, walking, and boothing all over campus, and it was just a good day overall. So, you know, we're committed to keeping this going, and but I just want to just express my sincere appreciation for just all the efforts of so many people in this very complicated, unusual time to get us where we are today. It was a good first day of the semester. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McLennan. Any questions or comments for the president?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Trustee Howard.
Yes, just President McLennan, you had indicated that your visit around campus, people were complying with the rules with a few exceptions. Were those exceptions corrected?
Yeah, they were. You know, it's really, as I've said in many of the communications and some of the ones I've put out more recently, we all have to do this, and that means all of us who, you know, care about what we're trying to do, being able to say something to the folks who might need just a little nudge. You know, I think last time we talked about this, I talked about educating and just reaffirming and trying to create what we're doing as the norm. And if you walked around campus today, you would have seen that it was the norm. I had two instances where, in one case, 3 students inside the sub were not wearing face coverings. I asked them to, and they did. And another gentleman in the library, Molstead Library, I asked him to, and he did. So, you know, we had the residence halls, students and their families moving in over the weekend, and entire families with little people. They were all masked up, and you know, I think what we've tried to do is be very clear about our expectations, and it appears that that's working, at least on day one. But to your point, if we're committed that if we don't get compliance, then we can't have you in this environment, and you know, we're all on board with that, with Alex and student in the student discipline side, and certainly HR on the employee side, and security on the talking to folks side. So it was pretty minor. I've talked to other folks on who are in the meeting here with us tonight. We all had some experience today, but I'd say generally when we did a touch base just before this meeting, our sense was that it was widespread compliance with what we're asking people to do. And think about, you know, it's pretty warm outside, and students don't necessarily have to wear a mask when they're just walking across campus by themselves. But I'd say I saw almost 90% of the people outside of a building wearing a face covering as well. So, you know, knock on wood, but that's where we are today.
Any other questions or comments for the president?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Trustee Wood.
thank you. Well, Rick, I would like to thank you for your efforts. We know there's a lot of strong feelings around this topic. That's very evident. But we also know that how desperately we want to stay open, and we want to be able to deliver our programs to students, and we want our faculty to continue on in their jobs. And so it is going to take the effort that you've been making and that they've all been making. So thank you very much, all of you, for sticking to it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I want to add just one more thing. The students who are here have expressed genuine appreciation for what we're trying to do, and the fact that we've gone to this effort to put this in a face-to-face format for them, so that they can. And there are just so many stories about what it means for them to be with the faculty right now, and to kind of get back to some sense of normalcy, even though it's with a mask on and it's 6 feet apart and all that. So the students who are here are very appreciative.
Any other comments for the president? All right, under old business, tab 1, it's the second reading of the board member general conduct policy. Trustee Howard, do you want to address that?
Yes,
You're muted. You're muted, Ken.
how's that? Better?
That's good.
Okay. We've gone through this a couple times. We've had a workshop on it. We've had a couple rounds of modifying the proposed document. And I got to tell you, my experience in drafting documents as a lawyer is that they seldom are perfect the first time. They grow with experience. And I guess I hope that we pass this tonight and then continue to work on it and improve it as our experience dictates in the future.
Any discussion related to the conduct policy? Trustee Wood,
Yeah.
looked like you had something.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if there was going to be a motion and then a second for discussion. I do have discussion. I understand we've been through this a few times, but I do have some other things to bring up.
Well, let me make a motion then to adopt the board member general conduct policy that's proposed.
Is there a second?
Yes, I'll second that for discussion.
All right. Any discussion relating to the proposed policy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Trustee Wood.
I do have, like Ken said, these things take time and a lot of effort to go through. And I went back and visited it again. And there's a couple of just little tweaks. I don't know. It kind of really ends up being in this meeting more of a, let's debate it a little bit and see if we can find the tweaks and if we can agree to them. Because Ken's done a Herculean job of continually putting our ideas together. So if we could go to page 2, section number 7. Is everybody with me?
Why don't you read it?
Okay. Number 7, it says, be loyal to the interest of North Idaho College, NIC, and the board. So I think I understand the desire behind that, but it reads like a loyalty oath, and that's really hard for people to do sometimes. So I just want to change those words a little bit. I want it to say work to support the interests of North Idaho College and the board. Is that something we could agree on?
Trustee Howard, is that something you would entertain as a change to the proposed policy?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just deal with these like they were amendments to the motion. So if that's Christie's amendment to the motion, she should make it and we get a second and then we can move on with
Okay.
it.
That works. I'll just keep going and then we can consider them amendments and see where they end up.
Let's do each one.
on-
Let's do them
Okay.
separately.
So, all right, so there's that one. I don't want it to say loyal because it's a loyal, it just sounds like a loyalty oath, even though I think I know the intention. So I'd like it to say work to support the interest of North Idaho College and the board. I make that amendment to the motion.
I'll second that.
So all in favor? Do we vote on that amendment in Joe?
Do you want to wait till the end and do them all at one time, or you want to do them as we go?
Yeah, let's just vote each amendment separately so we know at the end we've got a final document.
Okay,
See, the problem with that is whether you call it a loyalty oath or not, you've basically just said that dissension is not welcome. Who's going to interpret what's in the best interest or how you're supporting the college? I may disagree with all four of you. Is that in the best interest of the college? In my opinion, it is, but in somebody else's opinion, it may not. So I don't care for the language at all, but then I don't care for this policy at all, and I'm going to vote against it. I think it's unnecessary, and I think we're setting ourselves up to get tripped on a landmine. So you guys can put all the time, and we can keep parsing this out, and I appreciate Christy's effort, and I understand what she's saying there about the loyalty oath, and I want to hear every other point she's got because I appreciate the time I know she's put in this, and I appreciate her heart as I know towards this project. But at the overarching 10,000-foot view, I think the whole thing's still a mistake, and I think we spent a lot of time we shouldn't have spent on it. So that's my 2 cents.
any other discussion on the proposed amendment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, there's one nay. The motion carries.
Okay. If we can go to page 3. Interaction with the college personnel guidelines, the very first paragraph. The last sentence, I'd like to change the wording there. Board members shall inform the president of related contact and interactions. And the reason I suggest that is sometimes our interactions are just so simple. And had this policy been in place, I would have violated it this week, unintentionally, but I would have. You know, I made a phone call to Dr. Burns, talked a little bit about an endowment, but so that was college related. And those are not there's little small things. I don't mind sending the president an email. I'm happy to do that. I think it's respectful to say, just so you know, I had a conversation with Dr. Burns. I'm happy to do that. But this language is just too strong that before I can even make a call, I have to track down Rick. And it might not be anything that really matters. So I'd like to change that.
And again, Christy's got a great point, because say I have a question for Chris Martin about these foregone taxes and what we're having to do because of new legislation or anything else, or we're talking to him as the clerk of the college. There's another interaction. Again, we're setting ourselves up. And like Christy said, we're all going to violate this intentionally or unintentionally. And what do you do with that?
So Christy, what's your recommended language change?
My language is the last sentence of that paragraph would read, board members shall inform the president of related contact and interactions with college personnel.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion?
The only discussion I'd have is, to some extent, we're parsing words. Inform and coordinate. In order to coordinate, you got to inform. I mean, I guess I don't care what we say, but at some point in time, we really haven't changed the meaning of this, I don't think. So I'm willing to vote for that, but.
Thank you, Ken. I was concerned that I would have to track down Rick first. And so I appreciate you being workable with the language.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
There's one opposed, and motion carries. What else, Trustee Wood?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm getting there, but the more I looked at it, there were a couple of things. And I don't want to disrespect the work that's gone into this. So with that said, same page, the third bullet point down, I'd just like to remove the whole thing. And I'll tell you why, because I think it's covered in the first paragraph that we just went through. And I will say that some of us work with other organizations, and I'll give you an example. I am president of a task force, a human rights task force. We most certainly have interceded in issues involving the college. We've done it several times. I would expect we will do it again. And since I'm on the board, it puts me in a very awkward position of, I don't know, I just have to be real honest with you. I won't come and get permission of the board to do my human rights work. And so since it's kind of covered in the first paragraph that we're not going to just go show up with students, faculty, and administrators without informing the president, I'd just like to remove number 3.
The proposed amendment is to remove paragraph 3 on page 3. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah. I don't know that paragraph 1 is the same as paragraph 3. It may well be that you want to remove paragraph 3, but I don't think it's covered in paragraph 1. Paragraph 3 really talks about doing something with the students, faculty, or administrators on behalf of some third person, which is different than participating in meetings and stuff like that, unless invited. I think the intent of that particular provision is that a trustee presenting themselves as an advocate on behalf of some idea without letting the rest of the trustees know about college business. And so all it says is, let us know if that's what you're going to do, is intercede in behalf of. It doesn't, that's not covered in paragraph 1.
Can we have an
Mr.
example
Chair?
of that? Is there an example?
Trustee Banducci, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'd love an example if there's one that can be given.
From which one of us, Todd?
From anybody, but I'll take it from Ken since he's drafted this, his law firm. It must have had something in mind. I mean, each of these points I'm thinking would have some specific intention, and he's delineating between paragraphs 1 and 3. So I'm trying to cognitively understand the difference and what the intention is of paragraph number 3 here. And I'm trying to think of a world example, something that would tangibly help me to understand the purpose and intent and how it's being applied and what sort of situation we're trying to prevent.
Well, I might, if I'm looking for examples, and I don't know that I'd think of a good one right now, but if I were to have a client of mine who wants a contract with the college, and I went ahead and interceded on their behalf with the administration without letting the rest of the board know.
Oh, Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Trustee Wood.
I think informing the board, I'm fine informing the board. The language is approval of the board. So I mean, I don't mind telling all of you, hey, the task force is interceding on an issue on campus. I'm happy to tell you that, but I'm seeking approval. I'm going to do my work anyway.
If you want to change it, I mean, the idea here is to let all trustees know what other trustees are doing to the extent that it involves an interest of the board or the college. I mean, we all, at least from my perspective, I think we all need to strive to keep one another informed of what's going on. And that's what some of these rules are, or they're guidelines, they're not really rules. they're intended to do. So if you say without informing the board, that's fine. Because what we've done, I think, is still kept the line of communication open with regard to activities that are going on that may affect the board or the college.
I think that's fine, Ken. That works for me. Can we make that a motion?
Yeah, so without informing the board.
I second that.
Okay, well, let me ask a scenario then, just a what if I may, Chair Dunlap. Here's the question I have then. Say, does that extend to, say, me reaching out to the folks in charge of the veterans to let them know about a veterans event or some sort of sponsored activity or charitable thing, whether it be like a New Beginnings or who knows, whatever. So does that preclude me as a fellow veteran interested in the college and the veteran community from communicating with the leader of the veterans on campus about some event that might be going on or something that's supporting homeless vets or whatever? Am I required to inform or get approval from the board for something that's just kind of a veterans issue? You know, how far, to what level, how far do we take this, I guess?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, that is not interceding on behalf of anyone, but it would be, it would fall under paragraph 1 where you just inform the president that you're passing on that information to the Veterans Club. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
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 Oppose?
Nay.
Okay, there's one nay. The amendment carries. Trustee Wood, did you have any other suggested amendments?
I do. I'm almost done, and I know we didn't intend to spend a lot of time on this tonight, so I do apologize. If we could go down to page 4, number 4 bullet point. I guess I just wanted an example of that. I understand, again, it was, I'll read it. Trustees should make no announcement of nor give any information about action taken by the board until such action has been communicated by the board chairperson or president through regular official channels. I think what I'm reading is, if the press calls me at 9 o'clock at night after a board meeting, I should make no comment until a press release is issued by the board chair. I understand that. I understand speaking with one voice and not having 1,000 different comments, but I actually, you know what? It says should, so I'm sorry to waste your time on this. It says should. We'll do our best not to do that. Sometimes trustees are in a position where they just have to make a comment. We are elected officials. So we'll skip down to the bottom, relationship with the press. And I just wanted to change a couple of words, the very last sentence. However, the board recognizes elected officials will speak to the press when they feel it's appropriate. Because you may not only be responding to an inquiry. You never know every circumstance. It might not be an inquiry. It might be something where you feel you need to speak to the press. So I just wanted to change those few words.
So tell us the specific changes. Will then strike out respond and include speak to the press?
Yeah, instead of respond to an inquiry, it will say will speak to the press when they feel it's appropriate. We can't muzzle public officials. We just can't. We ask for cooperation, and I think that's what the language has done, Ken. You've done a good job on that. But we have to understand We are public.
I just want to know specifically. So we're striking respond to an inquiry of and inserting speak to the press. So it reads, board recognizes elected officials will speak to the press when they feel it is appropriate.
That's correct.
Okay. I'll second the motion. I seconded the motion.
Joe, did you hear that?
Oh, sorry, I had myself muted. I'm sure everybody was happy with that. But what I was trying to say was that the amendment has been seconded. And is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then all in favor of that proposed amendment signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, there's one nay. That amendment carries. All right, Trustee Wood, anything else?
Last one, Mr. Chair. Page 5 of 6, at the very top, conflict of interest. And what I would like to do, the more I've thought about this paragraph, it's not that it's not well written. It's just, once again, you have to think, how is that going to impact me and all the various entities that I may be involved in? And so I guess what I would like to place the language, and I don't have the language, but I'd like it to just follow state law and have a determination done by our legal counsel as to whether you actually have a conflict of interest.
Yeah, I think this does follow the state law, but I'm happy to have it reviewed. And we can always come back and amend this. Again, my opening comments to this this discussion is that I think these things are they're gonna gain a better draft as time goes by. So we could, without holding up this entire document, we could pass it and come back with an amendment to it next time.
I'm fine with that. That works for
I do have a question either for Trustee Howard or our attorney, Mr. Lyons. It was my understanding, and maybe mistakenly so, that in order to have a conflict of interest within the state of Idaho, there had to be a pecuniary interest by the individual affected. And so I don't see that reflected here. And maybe you can tell me if I'm off base or not.
Well, the statute on conflict of interest, Mr. Chairman, does relate to pecuniary interest. I don't have the statute right in front of me, but I think you're right. But there may be things that come up from time that do raise other questions. And I think Trustee Wood's suggestion that if there's confusion on that or there's a question about it, it should be relatively simple to review it, if that's what the board desires.
Yeah.
All right. So Trustee Wood, was there a proposed amendment with that, or are you satisfied coming back at some point?
We can come back. We'll ask if, my motion would be that our counsel prepare language that reflects the state law and his individual review. And we can do it next time and just move on with this policy.
Okay. Is there a second to Trustee Wood's motion?
Mr. Chairman, Mark, I take this as the current motion is to table this issue pending other language.
The issue relating to conflict of interest.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to confuse what we're doing here, but what I would suggest is that there's nothing that's going to prohibit us from just coming back in at any meeting with an amendment. We don't have to table anything. We don't have to do anything to set this aside. And with regard to getting additional information, I don't think we need a motion for that. I think council can go ahead and do that if it's requested. I guess there's nothing specific about tabling it that we need to do.
Well, there is a motion to approve the policy, and we have approved the proposed amendments to the policy. And so we'll move to whether or not to approve the policy with the proviso that we can come back. So is there any discussion related to approval of the overarching policy? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the policy with the approved amendments signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose?
Nay.
The motion carries 4-1. Thank you, Trustee Howard, for shepherding that through, and Trustee Wood for your proposed, or not proposed, but your amendments. We'll move on to tab 2 under old business, which is Institutional Review Board Policy. President McLennan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Dunlap. This is the second reading of this policy. You have the background. The North Idaho College Institutional Review Board was created for the purpose of reviewing any human subjects research conducted at North Idaho College. This includes all research with human subjects, including faculty, staff, and/or students as research subjects, or by NIC faculty, staff, and/or students at any location. The NIC Institutional Review Board was approved by the Senate as a standing committee earlier in the academic year, and the Senate requested that a related policy and procedure be developed, and that policy and procedure have been developed, and you have them, and so it's just recommended for approval.
Mr. Chair,
Trustee Wood.
I'll make a motion to approve the Institutional Review Board policy. I didn't see a number on it, but that's my motion to approve it.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion related to the Institutional Review Board policy?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Trustee Howard.
this is actually just a clarification for the record, I guess. In the agenda, it says that the requested board action, that this is a first reading, when indeed, I think this is a second reading, right?
It's indicated on my agenda that it's the second reading.
Right, but on the, on tab 2, it says first reading. I don't want anybody to be confused with it's properly set up as a second reading.
Okay.
Chair Dunlap, that's an error on the document. We will correct that.
All right. Any further discussion related to the Institutional Review Board policy that's been proposed? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 The Institutional Review Board policy is approved. Thank you, President McLennan. We'll move to tab 3 under old business, the third reading of the FY21 budget that had been delayed from our May meeting. And with that, Chris Martin, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity to come before you with the FY21 budget. There are very few changes from what's been presented previously. I'm happy to walk through those and just share what those are, if that's the will of the board.
Board members, questions, comments for Vice President Martin?
Well, when we look at this, how are we going to differentiate which version of the budget? Because my understanding is we've looked at the budget with 0% tax increase, 2% tax increase, and 3% tax increase. So what are we actually presenting? Or are we still just presenting all three of those options and we're choosing from, A, B, and C?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Vice President Martin.
just to kind of make a couple of quick notes here. What's changed between the prior versions, specifically in this document, it's the third reading, is we have now actually factored in the 5% holdback from the state, both on the revenue side as well as on the expense side. We've also increased the new property on the rolls, as well as what a 3% tax increase would be based off of the final calculations from Kootenai County. And we've also added some additional other revenue that we became aware of since the second reading. After that, there have been no changes to the actual budget. In the expense category, we've put forward at the board's request what would happen with no increase in step, with a half increase in step, and with a full increase in step. And so those are items that still need to be determined, but those are the changes that have been presented since the last reading.
Vice President Martin, can you tell us where we are with enrollment as in regard to what we had forecast?
Yes, sir. Let me share my screen here. Hopefully you can see here.
He's the guy that recommended it close.
At this time, as of this morning, we're down 4.6% year over year for enrollment, which is very, very good news. You'll recall that we forecasted a 9% decline in enrollment for the purpose of the budget. And as of this morning, we are trending much better than that 9%.
So it appears to me that we've got several decisions to make, and not necessarily all in one bundle. One is what to do with step increases. Another is what to do with taxes. And then thirdly, in general, the overall budget as it was proposed. So if there are other issues that the board members would like to tackle separately, please speak up. If not, I would certainly entertain a motion related to either any of those three issues.
Chair Dunlap, Trustee Banducci, I have another concern I'd like to express, and
You bet.
see if we can
Go ahead,
explore.
Trustee Banducci.
Recently, we've shared some information and looked at some things that have been produced regarding athletics and their impact on the college and the college budget, and some work that was produced by the former U of I president. And I know Dr. McLennan had been briefed on that previously and may even still have that presentation. And that's been shared as we look. And one of the things that's been a concern is that we don't have any, knee-jerk reactions as to how we approach athletics going forward because of the COVID world or because of budget or whatever. And as I look at this, I'd asked previously, has there been any impact to the athletics when we were talking about this prior? And I want to make sure I understand what we're doing with athletics and how we're going to try to maintain the budget. My approach is to kind of maintain a status quo, no taxes, no step, no changes. Just if we can press on with where we're at, we're down a little bit, but I think we can get there. But I look at things like Patty's position. She took the early retirement. She was the energy, working for Al to spearhead the fundraising and coordinate the events and the activities. And she's gone, and that's a position that's not filled. And Al was a pretty charismatic fellow and knew a lot of folks and contacts. And we've brought in a new athletic director who's getting his feet under him, but still doesn't have that breadth of reach that Al had and the relationships that Al had established over many, many years. And so I'm concerned about that, where at the same time, I've got a booster club that currently has no president. From my understanding, Rich Dussel stepped down. So the primary fundraising arm and support arm of the athletics, the booster club, is without a president at this time. So that's concerning. And then I see things like the assistant coach for the women's basketball team, that position being eliminated. And I've got a guy like George Swanson, who's the men's assistant, who's now going to try to do double duty and be the assistant for both men's and women's basketball. Now that'll work to a small degree with this revised schedule after the new year, where it's just league and men and women will be traveling together for the most part. But beyond that, I don't know how that's going to work so good. And does that mean that George is on the bench for twice as many games, that he's at twice as many practices? Is he still leading the recruiting like he's been doing for Corey? Does he do that for the women's team also? So is George working twice as much for the same pay? I'm just trying to think through this. And I don't like a single point failure as a coach. I've been a head coach. I've been an assistant coach. I've coached from the 1A to the 5A level. At Lake City, we had multiple assistant coaches. Even when I coached at Charter, I still had 2 assistant coaches. It concerns me for several reasons. If nothing else, just student safety and just optics and appearances. So I don't ever like the idea of one coach being all on their own coaching. And I know it does happen. And then we're going to be splitting this person. So I see a couple, 3 impacts to the athletic department. Not sure what positive impact that's having to our budget necessarily. And so I just want to make sure we're not going to harm athletics, because that could be a slippery slope. And the more we harm it, the more we're going to have a problem. We've already lost 2 wrestling coaches. We've lost a soccer coach. We've lost, softball coach, but she went to another opportunity. But we've had some transitions, some changes in coaches. We're reducing our staff. I think we're in a very interesting time that we need to be careful what we do in preserving our athletic programs. So,
President McLennan, would you like to address any of those operational issues? You're muted.
Hate it when I do that. Chair Dunlap, thank you. I guess I'll start with some general comments. When we began the budget process last August, we began early because we were concerned about, as the board knows, some of the structural elements as we look based on and whatnot. And a significant part of that plan had to do with the early retirements and also position turnover. And so a couple things. I can say that athletics is not being treated any differently than any other unit in the college in terms of assessing the need for positions as position turnover occurs. So there's not, in fact, in all areas of the college as position turnover occurs, we're looking for opportunity down the road of those structural challenges that we have with the budget to correct those. That's one aspect. Another aspect has to do with just management of the athletic program. And I'd be happy to prepare a presentation if the board's will to discuss organization of athletics at a future board meeting if that's your desire. But I can say now that the decisions that have made from an operational perspective have been made to improve the operation of athletics overall. And I don't think it would be appropriate for me to get into the booster organization. They are going through some transition as well, and it's all positive. In fact, all these changes are all very positive changes, both for the culture of athletics and the provision of athletics programs for our students who participate in those sports. I would also just add one other element that as far as athlete safety and that's one consideration that goes into these decisions, as is Title IX compliance and a number of other variables that get factored in. And again, I think I'd be happy either in a workshop or a future board presentation to go through this organizational, some of these changes, invite both Dr. Stanley and our new athletic director, Bobby Lee, to come in and discuss the rationale for some of those things if the board desires.
Thank you, President McLennan. I'd like to focus us back on the budget and the approval process for that budget, and would entertain a motion by trustees related to the budget, the taxes, or steps.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Trustee Wood.
Thank you. And I'm happy to do that. I do have one more question for Chris. I just want Chris to clarify a couple of things. I know I've had it. He's provided it to me in the past. I don't have it in front of me. But Chris gives a real good history of this board and the times that we've taken the 3% levy, which is pretty rare. And he went back, I think, the last 8 or 9 years. Very rare that we've taken a tax increase. And we did that because we felt we were in a position that we could go without it. But Chris, I'd like you to clarify, in case there's any confusion, the proposal from the governor that is really aimed at cities and counties, that if you don't take a tax increase, then the federal CARES money will be supplemented. That is not for higher education, correct?
Chair Dunlap, Trustee Wood, that is correct. My understanding is that specifically related to expenses that were towards policing.
Correct. So if sometimes there's confusion where people might think, well, they shouldn't have considered a tax increase because if they hadn't, then the federal money would have came in. And that's just not correct for NIC.
Correct.
The other thing that I'd like to talk about with the board is, oh gosh, maybe 2 months ago in June when we talked about this, I asked faculty assembly Chris Pelchat to go back and talk with his group about a consideration of a half a step in a year, because we are in a difficult position where everyone just kind of has to pull together and do what we can do. And so I don't know, I don't want to put Chris on the spot. If Chris wants to speak up, I'll certainly listen to it. But I hope that there was some consideration for that. I'm leaning for that. I'll make a motion for that. I certainly don't want to go with no compensation. If you look at the local school districts, the municipalities, they all have contracts, and there isn't anybody that's not going to receive any compensation that they've already agreed to. So I'm not looking to harm our employees. Our employees are certainly within a group. Some of them are, we could even say we proudly make sure they have a livable wage, but it's not a lot of money. So I wouldn't want to harm our employees. So with that, I'll make a motion that in this budget, the trustees consider between a 3% tax increase for this year, is unusual for us, and a mid-year step for faculty. And then there's another question from administration about the ability to dip into our fund balance, and that would be part of the motion as well.
Just as clarification, Trustee Wood, you cut out for a portion of that. And so I just want to make sure that we're clear on what you are suggesting. I believe you said there would be, you're proposing a 3%, the taking of the 3% and a mid-year step for our employees. Is that correct?
That's correct, but I also, Mr. Chair, included the ability for the administration to access our fund balance the budget as well.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Trustee Howard.
Yeah, I prefer to handle each one of these issues separately rather than lumping them all into one motion. It just makes the discussion better. And there really are separate issues, I think. If we took them separately, I think I would second it, but I'm not going to second it now, the way it stands.
Trustee Wood, are you amenable to us taking each one of those items separately?
Certainly.
Okay. Well, let's.
Okay, my first.
What's that?
I'll make my first motion.
Okay.
That I would make a motion that in this year of dire uncertainty, that the North Idaho College trustees take a 3% tax increase.
Is there a second to that?
I didn't hear part of that. How big was the tax increase proposed?
3%.
3? I would second that.
It's been moved and seconded that North Idaho College take its allowed 3%. Is there discussion related to that? Hearing none, we will
You know, sorry,
go ahead,
Chair
Trustee
Dunlap.
Banducci.
Recognizing that most of the local folks have decided to not take tax increases this year. Again, I think it's optics. I think it's not the right time to do that. But that's my opinion.
I guess I'd like to add a comment related to this. If you look at the amount of budget reductions that the state has handed us, it's fairly significant. And then you look at the fact that Idaho is the fastest growing state percentage-wise economically in the country. And secondly, that the state has considerable reserves, and those reserves were not allocated to higher education. They were moved to reduce property taxes. So we came out the loser all the way around in this thing. And I would support the motion before us. Any other discussion?
Chair Dunlap,
Yes, Trustee Murray.
just a quick question for Chris Martin in terms of the tax impact on a property owner such as myself. Will I see an increase on my property taxes?
Chair Dunlap, Trustee Murray, this year, because of the increased valuation in the county, actually with an increase from North Idaho College in your tax rate, you'll receive a lower tax bill in whole dollars because of the increase in valuations.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to take the 3% signify by saying aye.
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 Oppose?
Nay.
There's 1 nay and 4 ayes. The motion carries. Trustee Wood, did you want to make a motion regarding one of your other items with regard
Yes,
to?
thank you, Chair. Thank you. I make a motion of a half-step increase mid-year for the amount of $232,785 plus related benefit cost of $46,775.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to a mid-year half step for employees. Is there a discussion related to that item?
Mr. Chair,
Trustee Howard.
in our last discussion that we had on this, as I recall, we had some input from both the faculty and staff. And I think they understood the position that the college was in this year with some uncertainty. And I think we still have some uncertainty, not only with regard to enrollment, but it seems like every time we turn around, the state's asking for some kind of a holdback, or we're not getting money we thought we had. And so I quite frankly do not support a step increase at this time. That's not to say we don't appreciate everything that our family members here at NIC do. I just think that the timing is such and the financial conditions are such that a step increase would not be appropriate at this time, even for half a year.
Mr. Chair? If I could continue the discussion. What we talked about, I think back in June, we talked about looking at enrollment, and Chris Martin just told us that the picture is brighter than we had hoped it would be, or we hoped it would become brighter. You know what I'm trying to say. So with that, I mean, I think we were sincere in let's look at enrollment and let's try to find something that we can afford and still take care of the needs of our employees. So I think this is a good compromise. It's mid-year, it's half step. We don't let them get behind the market so far. And again, our enrollment is improving.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion for a mid-year half step, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose?
No,
Nay.
There's 3 votes for the amendment or for the motion and 2 against. So that motion carries. Trustee Wood, anything else related to the budget?
Well, there was a request, and perhaps Chris can enlighten me on this a little better. There's a fund balance transfer request. Chris, is that something we need to do right now with this budget, or do you come back to us for an amendment?
Chair Dunlap, Trustee Wood, we are requesting the authorization for a fund balance transfer so that we can move forward everything that's in the budget plus what's just been voted on tonight. So that would be $1,118,482 is what we'd be requesting with the half step.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion for that fund balance transfer of $1,398,131, and that fund balance is absolutely for this purpose, and we rarely use it. And my motion is to give the authority for that transfer.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the trustees approve a fund balance transfer to support this next year's budget. Any discussion related to that?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Trustee Howard.
Yes, again, Chris, could you tell us what the balance is on the fund balance and where we're at on that? Any obligations we have for that? Because I quite frankly don't remember where we're at on that.
Chair Dunlap,
Yes.
at this point, what we have in that account balance at the end of this fiscal year will be $13.7 million. There are no outstanding obligations against the capital reserve at this moment, with the exception of a potential Meyer Health Science expansion to come before the board later this fall. That's the capital reserve, and there's approximately $7.5 million in the general fund balance.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion related to the fund balance transfer motion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Trustee
It's my
Howard.
understanding this money is coming out of the general fund balance then of 7.5 million. Is that right?
That is correct.
Which we reduce it down to about 6.4 or something like that. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Oppose?
Nay.
There are 2 nays and 3 ayes, so the motion carries. VP Martin, is there anything else specifically you need a decision on with regard to approving our budget?
No, sir, not at this time. Thank you so much for your patience this year, as well as the continuing resolution. That has been very helpful to the college, so thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Trustee Howard.
I have a question for Chris. There was something I read that, and I think it was if we didn't take the full 3%, that we needed a resolution to reserve anything, any remainder of that 3% for the foregone. And obviously we're taking the full 3%, so we don't need to do that. But my question is, was there something in the legislation requiring us reserving that specifically, that where we need to go back and reserve the foregone that we already have? Should we have a resolution reserving the existing foregone because I didn't see the legislation, and quite frankly, I don't know what it requires of us.
Chair Dunlap, Trustee Howard, great question. The legislation holds in place all the foregone the college is currently taking. There's no need to go out and declare that. But this legislation does require that any movement going forward, if the college wishes to reserve foregone, there has to be a declaration passed by the board to actually go in and reserve any additional foregone on top of what the college already has in reserve.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to new business. Tab 4, resolution to reserve foregone taxes. There's no need to approve that because we have agreed to take the 3%. I believe that's correct. Is that so, Vice President Martin?
Chair Dunlap, that's correct.
Okay, then we'll move on to tab 5, which is the first reading and/or action for the amended faculty assembly constitution and bylaws. And Chris Pelchat, will you present that?
Thank you, Chair Dunlap, fellow board members. Like I spoke about in my faculty assembly notes, one of the things that we've been working on for the past few months is revising our constitution and bylaws to bring us up to where we are currently and how we operate. It's been quite a while since those have been revisited, and it was time for us to go in and make sure that we were following the rules or changing them to meet what we currently do. I had them submitted as a document. Would you like me to, I'm not sure how you want me to go through this. It does say that the board needs to ratify any changes to both the Constitution and bylaws. And the way that we did this is we had 9 separate votes during assembly, and each vote contained specific amendments kind of in a specific category. Would you like me to put those on the screen and go through them one by one, or how would you like me to proceed?
Board members, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chair, this is the first reading. I guess I'd like at least a general understanding of the amendments and the need.
Sure. I'll go through them one by one. Let me pull them up here. Are you all seeing that on as a full screen for you?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So we had 113 faculty participating in our assembly. Some folks came in and out during the meeting. We averaged around 100 folks during the meeting as a whole. Several of the motions did attain some folks in opposition, but they were the highest number of opposition for any particular vote was no more than 4. The way that these amendments were put in place, I'll just go through them one by one in the order that they were voted on. The first amendment is language that was being proposed to be added to both the Constitution and the bylaws. One of the things that our Constitution and bylaws have in order to change the language of them is requiring 60% of the faculty to be in favor of the changes. And it has been really difficult for us to get 60% of the faculty to show up to any particular meeting in the past. For us, that number is 92 this year. And so in the past, when they've had changes being proposed to the Constitution and bylaws, they've actually had to do it through a digital vote post meeting. But we didn't have anything in the bylaws or Constitution that would allow for that type of vote to occur. So the first amendment was to add language in the Constitution, was adding underneath Article 5, Section 2, adding or changing number 4 to how we would conduct a digital vote, and then changing number 4 to number 5. And then in the bylaws, it's adding the same exact language underneath Article 7 and it's number Section 3. Both of them are the same language in both places. So that was the first thing, is adding a portal for a digital vote if we don't get that in a real meeting. Amendment vote number 2 was dedicated to how we count votes. There was nothing in the bylaws that talked about the voting process. And last year, when we were starting to vote on things related to COVID, there were many people casting abstention votes. Upwards of 20 people were doing that regularly during vote. And we had nothing in the bylaws that talked about how abstentions are counted. And I've worked for a couple nonprofits and I've seen it handled different ways. And so the faculty discussed how an abstention would be counted. And so what we've proposed is an abstention counts as a non-vote for people that haven't read the material or are not up to date on the things that are being voted on. And if they choose an abstention, that therefore lowers the majority necessary to actually pass the vote by the number of people that abstain. So that was vote number 2. Vote number 3 was focused on, let's see here. Oh yeah, vote number 3 was basically just about stylistic differences in the document as well as typos. The first one, anywhere we have a number of days listed within the document, the number 3 appears after the word 3 in parentheses, and there was one place that wasn't the case. So to make it look the same, we proposed that. And then in Article 4, Section 2 of the bylaws, there was a typo of the word election, and it should have read elected. So those 2 were just stylistic and typo. Amendment number 4, vote number 4, was, there was some language in here about when faculty assembly occurs. And then there was some issues with how it was originally worded. It had some issues about, or let's see, what did faculty want? At the beginning of fall semester. And historically, faculty assembly occurs during the week of convocation. And so to be more specific with that, we changed the language. Vote number 5, this is, I think it's vote 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all related to kind of the same idea that faculty were concerned about. The first one is we made places in the original bylaws for adjunct voice to be heard during faculty assembly. And the way in which that voice was to be heard, and I'll get what that was set up like down a little bit below. It's very difficult to find out which adjuncts were actually eligible for that level of participation within faculty assembly. And so what we're proposed is that of the faculty assembly executive committee, we add an adjunct faculty representative to that group. So that would give them voting rights as part of an executive committee group and a rep for the adjuncts to have a voice within assembly. We also took out typically in May and typically in August and made it more clear of when those things occur. One of the things that has come up with the chair roles, the chair has some summer obligations, and so they have to take over after the May meeting, and they hold that position through summer. So we changed that as well. Article 3, Section 2, we updated this language to match the faculty or the adjunct faculty representative that was added in number 5. And then the number 4 has some information about committees. There is a committee policy now on standing committees, and this was written before that existed, so we changed some of the language to match that policy and procedure. Amendment vote 7 was about the membership. This one was related to standing committees. So we changed some of that language to be in line with the policy procedure for standing committees. And then there was also some questions about how this was worded by the faculty. And so I did some historical digging and found that on occasion, the assembly wanted the ability to place adjuncts on voting committees in places that was relevant. And so that's where they say members who do not qualify. That's who they were alluding to. And so in the rationale I placed, talked how this was put in place for adjuncts to be on committees. It's something that we haven't used historically, but it's nice to have in place. For example, if we were going to do some sweeping changes to the adjunct, the job of an adjunct on campus, it would probably be worthwhile to put an ad hoc committee with those members on that. Number 8, this is what kind of fueled all these changes. Article 2 talks about what a quorum is for us. And it says that voting participation shall be extended to those members who have served 4 consecutive semesters, at least at a half-time appointment. And that, knowing that number was very difficult. It actually took me about 3.5 months to get that number, and that number ended up only being 4 folks. But it still held up me knowing what quorum was. And sometimes faculty assembly, we are right on the button for trying to get quorum to conduct business. So our proposal is to strike that language from the from Article 2 and just leaving it to full-time faculty, and then replacing the adjunct voice on the executive committee by having the adjunct faculty rep placed there. Amendment vote 9 was related to standing committees. Again, there's a policy and procedure that talks about how standing committees are created and managed. And before that was in place, there were standing committees that reported directly to the faculty assembly. And with that change, we just decided to update this language to allow committees to change more easily over time without having to come back to the bylaws to change the committee structure. So we struck all of the language and then just added 2 new sections, which are located at the bottom, which basically states that it's the responsibility of the faculty assembly chair to gather the reports of the standing committees that are most closely related to faculty work, and then how often those committees are responsible for reporting to assembly. Those are the amendments to both the Constitution and the bylaws proposed by faculty assembly. Questions? Sorry, my screen is also getting very dark. It looks like I'm in a cave.
Board members, any questions or comments for Chris?
Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate you going through that.
No problem.
Anything else for Chris? All right, Chris, we'll ask you to bring that back at the next board meeting for approval, if that works for you.
That would be great.
Okay. And you can go ahead and pull down the screen you got up there. Yeah, thank you. Let's see, board chair report. I've just got a couple items. Convocation last week went very, very well. There were 300 people that tuned in on Zoom, so it was quite a large grouping. Kai, as I mentioned earlier, was the chair. She did a very good job. It went very quickly, and convocation was done in about 45 minutes. So that was pretty remarkable. Also, President McLennan and your staff, I appreciate all the safety measures you've instituted with regard to students and our employees and the COVID-19 virus. I've heard comments from a number of people in the community that say that they really appreciate those efforts and the fact that there is no gray area, that we are absolutely committed to providing a safe environment for our students and our employees. So thank you everybody for making that happen. Our next meeting will be back on schedule, which will be a Wednesday. It'll be on September 23rd. And then lastly, I want to mention, and Lita, I'm hoping you'll comment on this with regard to closure over time with the aerospace program related to low enrollment and high costs.
Chair Dunlap, thank you for this opportunity to speak to this. We have made the decision that we will be closing the aerospace program, and as you well know, that a decision to close programs is never easy, and especially when a program like this that has had a remarkable success in terms of the education that it's providing for our students. And when our students leave that program and go out into the industry, they are well prepared, very competent technicians in how they have learned and how this program has progressed. The reality is as you mentioned, that it really is, if I can use a cliche, it's the perfect storm. And this storm has been brewing, I would say, over a few years, in that we have our biggest challenge, or one of our biggest challenges, has been to maintain a sufficient enrollment in the program. This is an outstanding program, and we are completely baffled, if you will, to understand why we don't attract more students to this program, and that makes it difficult. You know, it's an expensive program to run, mostly because it is federally regulated, and in that federal regulation, we have to meet certain standards ongoing and document everything, and so it becomes a very costly program to manage. Our success rate, although it has been fine, it has not been as, our completion rate, success rate has been fine. It has not been as outstanding as we would like for it to be, and many things contribute to that. I would say one of the most recent years challenges as well is just the changes to the aerospace industry itself. You know, pre-COVID, there was recently incidents with safety issues in a certain fleet of airplanes, which decreased the production of airplanes, and that is being remedied and being fixed, and people are working on that even probably as we speak this evening. And then the pandemic hit, and of course then there's a huge decrease in the number of air travel of people. And so those things have an impact. Certainly believe that those factors will change, and that the airline industry will get back to full force in a few years, maybe 3 years or so, who knows what that time frame is. But in preparing and educating students, you really have to have that full productivity and the need for that workforce well in advance of recruiting students. So it's difficult at this particular time to promise graduates that, you know, they can go anywhere, work anywhere, without that reassurance of where the aerospace industry is currently. The other thing contributing to it is that NIC has been trying to establish a power plant program that would be in conjunction with the maintenance program. Most schools across the country have both of them working together, and that's what helps sustain the enrollment. But the high cost of establishing the power plant has been unattainable for North Idaho College, and so we think that that is part of our challenge in attracting students to our program. And then lastly, it is maintaining a leased building for this program. We have ongoing issues. When it's not our building, we never know when we might be asked to leave the building and be forced to be looking for a new facility. And as many of you who have visited the aerospace program and facility, the center, know that there is a lot of materials, a lot of equipment, a lot of planes. We even have a helicopter required to be able to run that program. And as a result, we have made the decision moving forward that this probably is the best time to make that hard call, close the program, allow the students that are currently enrolled in the program to finish the program this year. And for the students who had shown interest in entering the program this fall, we have been working with them to find a new program to attend. In fact, Spokane Community College has been very open to receiving some of our students into their program, or help students find a totally different program of study to engage in. So I thank you for the opportunity to explain this tonight to the board and to our public as well. I want to express appreciation, tremendous appreciation to Patrick O'Halloran, who has been our director of the program. He's done an outstanding job, and we have faculty and staff who are incredibly committed to our students, who have provided them this wonderful education and this program. And a final thank you to our industry partners. We have received tremendous support from our industry partners all along the way, and they continue to support us. As we look to the future, we are really hoping that we can convert this program into an apprenticeship model, which will be of great benefit both to the community and to our college. So we're not completely discounting the ability to provide aerospace education in the future, but we need to regroup and figure out how we can best do this in a more economical way. So thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Burns. That concludes my portion of the board chair's report. Are there any remarks for the good of the order?
Mr. Chairman, if I could make just a clarification here. And going back, before we get to remarks for the good of the order, I recall that we had amendments to the proposed budget, but I'm a little unclear as to whether we have an approval of the budget as proposed with amendments.
All right. Then I think we need to make that clear. Thank you, Mr. Lyons. Trustee Wood, in light of your 3 motions, would you be inclined to make a motion for approval of the FY21 budget?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move to approve the FY21 budget as proposed.
Is there a second to that?
Yes, there is.
It's been moved in, seconded that a motion to approve the FY21 budget. Any further discussion related to the budget?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Trustee Howard.
I suspect the motion was to approve the budget as proposed, but it's really as amended, I think, because we had the original proposal and then we amended it. So I guess I'd like to see if we can just make sure that the motion is to approve the budget as amended.
Good catch. Trustee Wood, are you okay with that friendly amendment?
Yes, thank you, Ken.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor of approving the amended FY21 budget signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
There is 1 nay, 4 ayes. The FY21 budget is approved. Finally, are there any remarks for the good of the order?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Trustee Wood.
if I could just remark on Lita's comments. First of all, thank you, Lita, for taking us through that. I know it had to be a very difficult decision. Those decisions are hard to make, but we have such great people in charge that work through those tough decisions, and you're one of them, Lita, so thank you for that. I won't ask you to answer this. I just hope that, because it's personnel, but I just hope that we can still find a home for the faculty and staff that were connected to that program at NIC. And then also, I'd like to really thank everybody for their hard work during the COVID. That's just been amazing. And the updates that we get from Laura's office and from President McLennan, it's very informative. I got my new t-shirt today. I'm super excited about that, and my mask. And I try to be a walking billboard for NIC. And so I appreciate it when you send those things to the board. That's it, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Any other comments for the good of the order? If not, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.